All right, let's get the microphone test out of the way a little early today. Let me know if you can hear me okay across the various chats, that being the private chats as well as the public chats here going on here on YouTube and Twitch currently. I will be streaming. Ooh, that was a harsh S. I will be streaming even to X pretty soon. I have to reconfigure everything to do that, but we will also be streaming live on x.com. Let me know if you can hear me okay, and we're going to get started here pretty shortly.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. CBR Street Gang, this is all by standing by, over.
All right, let's go ahead and get the music under control here. And we're going to get started here. Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays here on Landy's Crypto Corner even. Got to get the channel name right, jeez. And I'm your host, Landy. Today is Monday, December 11th, 2023. At least I hope it's Monday, December 11th, 2023. I feel like I've been in a bit of a time warp lately. We're going to start, of course, as always, with Bitcoin. We're actually going to start by looking at the lower term timeframes here today. As many people, many people were very surprised by this move. And there was some clues prior to the move getting rolling to the downside that it was likely to head down and test down further. The very first of which is here on the hourly chart. You can see that we had very tight compression of the Bollinger Bands on the 1 hour chart. We had a wick down into the lower second and third standard deviation. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. And let's see if I can get the right, there it is, there's the arrow. We had a wick down into the lower second and third. Bitcoin is trading below the basis here. Very tight compression. And then we saw the etchings of expansion beginning on this candle yesterday on Sunday. Now, this was not the candle that really kicked off the expansion. It was actually the next candle here, giving you an hour bias that things were going to continue to expand to the downside after breaking the lows over here. Now, there was a little bit of a support area down below, but it did expand right through that. And well, there was some clues that this was going to occur should we move outside of this range on the daily here. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the daily. And we can see that Bitcoin was going sideways at the highs here. We can see that it was between the upper first and second standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands. But I want to call your attention to this bearish divergence that was still in play. And the reason why this was in play is because even though Bitcoin technically put in a higher low here on Friday's close, well, it didn't get continuation on Saturday's candle. So the way to look at this was pretty simple, actually. If it traded above the Friday candle, then we were looking at continuation to $45,000 at the wick high, possibly the monthly up there, which is at 45.5. There's another monthly at 47.1, and then the monthly swing highs up there at 48.240. And if it did not get continuation, then if it did breach the downside candle on Friday, then you could either take the close open down here, or you could take the wick low of that candle. Then it was at minimum going to test this little swing low here at around 42.8. Now, when we look back at the hourly here, we can see that it didn't quite get to that area. That was this little consolidation over here on that expansion, but it was indicating that it was at minimum going to test that area. And then the next big area to test would have been $42,000, which it did, of course, test. It actually closed around that area, right around these highs over here. And then there's the bottom side of that little consolidation as well. We can see that we were trying to hold support there for a little while, or Bitcoin rather was trying to hold support there for a little while, and is now trading below it. So we step it down to the next area, which wasn't quite hit on this wick low. But it's mean reversion. That's what's in play right now, and that was going to remain in play from the daily perspective here, as long as Bitcoin traded below the Friday wick high there. That was telling you that basically there's no continuation, even in the lower term timeframes, if we don't see it trade above that high to at least go test the current wick high at $45,000. Now. There is more than just the bearish divergence that was in play. You could see that once that low was put in, even if we saw a higher high, it was very likely that it was going to throw some bearish divergence. So there wasn't really a trade to the upside from the highs if you weren't already in a trade. It was more of looking for a move back down, mean reversion, and or expansion to the local highs. It was more of a range trade. Maybe you get a little bit higher than that. There wasn't much to be had there if you weren't already long. So there was a buildup of open interest here as well at that high and in the range highs up here. And we saw that this open interest that was building up was at the 44,500 area. Kind of went sideways at around 12.3 billion. Started to move down. Now, the thing about open interest is it moved down and actually broke the lows and came back to this little consolidation around this $42,000 area. You can see here on the lows of open interest. Let me actually open this chart up a little bit more. And, open interest typically, and this is something that you do need to understand about open interest, is open interest. When open interest goes up, it typically goes up with price. When it comes down, price typically is headed down. Now, there is the opportunity when price heads down and open interest heads down that there is a bit of bullish divergence. So, for instance, we have this read down here that was wicked on open interest at around $10.88 billion. And that was this consolidation right around 39 39.7, almost $38,000 on the high side, and 39.3 on the low side. And that was much lower open interest than even the range below it, which was at 38.6 to around $39,000. It's about 38,900. You see that it was open interest was at about 11.5 billion up there, and then on the lows it dipped all the way down to 10.88 billion. And in this case, this was shorts getting liquidated. It also created, an uptrend. We have an uptrend in Bitcoin here, and we had a bit of a downtrend or divergence in price here and open interest here. We had, well, in fact, this was just higher lows the whole way. So this isn't really the best example of a divergence. Realistically, what we're going to be looking for from here is open interest divergence, or people willing to put on positions on the way down on a higher term time frame for open interest like the daily. But one of the big things that you did see prior to this big move down was open interest was moving up very aggressively from this low here at 11.5 billion, 11.6 billion or so, up to just over $12 billion. So about $500 million worth of longs on these lower lows on the hourly. Now, granted, it was lower low on a close, but it did hold the wick, so it was a swing higher low, but it was a closing lower low on this hourly here. And open interest just kind of rocketed up in that 500 million right around the open of CME, and that's never something that you really want to see on either side. You kind of want to see who's going to get washed out first and then come back to it later. In this case, it started to break that consolidation to the downside there, and and it used that open interest to liquidate a bunch of longs because it was longs building up there. We can see that in that hourly candle, there's about $61 million in longs. There was a lot more in aggregate, I believe. If we take a look at the liquidations over the past 24 hours, let's go to liquidations, and we can see over the past 24 hours, Bitcoin, it's actually at around 135 million. I suspect it's actually a little bit more than that. I don't think this is a completely accurate read, but it's a pretty nasty move to the downside on the wick low here. Now we're on the Bitcoin in 60 seconds chart. On the wick low, it hit around 40,300. Didn't really spike any major close or open either. So, but one of the big things that it did do is it headed back towards the basis. So in the lower term timeframes, it lost the 2 weeklies here, and this was the area that I had mentioned Bitcoin needed to hold, and that is at 43,200 to 41.8. It was trading around 41.8 earlier today, and then it rejected this area, which is pretty par for the course. This was a close open over here as well from the 4th into the 5th, so that was Monday the 4th into the 5th of December, and then head down to the basis on the daily. So one of the big things that I'm going to try to answer for everyone, including myself, right, is, well, what does this mean for the longer term? Well, I mean, you can see it pretty clearly right here on the daily. We had the bearish divergences. We've had bearish divergences from this consolidation. They didn't do much, but now we have the extreme end of bearish divergence, which is up in the over 80 read. We had one drive. We're about ready to populate another drive. I would say this move is already in progress and confirmed, obviously. And, so that does meet the criteria. You can kind of aggregate these two drives off of the move up that was sideways and up, and these two drives up here as being a 3-drive reversal. But in this case, it's not a trend reversal. It is a mean reversion play. So things headed back to the basis and even under are just fine. Technically this was a higher low, so this was a structural break because we did get a, let's see, what was the close open up here? It was $44,084, and then this candle was at 44,192. So there was a close open low put in that is also confirmed by something like an RSI there. And this is a trend break. So is it a big one? No. In fact, the real big trend break would come on any closures below this wick low here, which is below the lower first standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands, which is coming in at 39,400 currently. That wick low is at 36,175. I'm sorry, 36,715. And below there, then it's game on to go test the bottom side of this consolidate upward, sideways and up consolidation to break out expansion. But as you can tell by the bands, this is just a mean reversion move. And until it breaks any meaningful structure, that's what it's going to remain. Now, could this, get aggressive bounces back to the top side, equal highs, lower highs, maybe slightly higher highs on more bearish divergence, and then come down lower and start to trend? Sure. But that's not what's currently occurring. So I'm seeing this, a lot being made of this move right here is in a lot of the social media sphere surrounding crypto across various platforms is this is it, this was it, this is the top, and it's only down from here, and it's going to go and it's going to sweep the macro low, it's going to go way lower, and here's our $10,000 to $12,000 targets again, or 8 to 12,000 or whatever. And it hasn't even really broken any meaningful trend. And we can zoom out a bit more here on the weekly, and you can see that this would simply be a top on the weekly. It's not even, it's not even in danger on the trend side of things until we saw something like this low down here get taken out. And this is at 26,500. So, that's there's a lot being said about this, and you got to take it all in context, right? This isn't even close to the upper first standard deviation as it currently stands. So yes, it was a big dump off on the daily, big move down, but it's not even going to lose the upper first standard deviation on the weekly until we see a move below 37,460 to 500 area. Now that is where we could then look for a much further downside move, and that is back to the basis. And guess where the basis is now? It's around 31.8. It's coming in at 31.7, I should say, but it's right there, right around the high at 31.8. Now, of course, we all remember what area this is if you've been following along with me for a while, and that is the ever important daily, weekly, and monthly area on support and resistance down here. So this area, of course, is a close open on the monthly. That is right here at this close open of the candle that actually broke the major higher low on the macro scale there at 28.8. So, a retest of that would not be out of the question, especially since we see that the weekly is lining up in that area. Now, I do suspect, if Bitcoin is going to, well, it's not that I suspect it. The condition is if Bitcoin remains above the upper first standard deviation here at around that 37, we'll call it 500, 400 to 500 area at the weekly upper first, then we're going to see the basis above that breakout area at the daily, weekly, monthly close there at 31.8. But if Bitcoin does lose it this week, then we're, generally looking for a retest somewhere around that area. It does not have to get directly there if that were to happen. You can see here that there is a bit of a zone where this basis is coming in, where there is a daily untested area that was resistance that you'd want to see flip to support at 32.4. But even before getting there, you'll note a few different things. Bitcoin has a lot of support underneath it right now on the longer term timeframes. So even though it lost the 41.8 weekly in the lower term timeframes now, we still on the weekly timeframe would need to see it close below there. But if it did lose it, there is weekly support directly below at $39,000 to $40,000 down to this monthly at 38,500. Now, if that area is lost, you know what I'm going to say. 37.7 as the weekly, down to this 36.2 weekly. Then, if that area is lost, then we look down to the next monthly, which is at $35,000, to the weekly just below at 34,750, before even entertaining a move back to this daily um, uh, area that has been untested, and then the tested as resistance daily, weekly, and monthly level at 31.8. So there's a long way to go to even get there. And then directly below there is these two swing highs on a close for the weeklies. That would be I would love to see this, to be quite honest, but I don't know if we'll actually get anything like this, but that would be 30,600 to 300. Now, this is a big move on the daily. Does it change things longer term? Well, let's go ahead and take a little bit more of a look at something like the other confluence here on the daily and the weekly. That, if things didn't break the highs, they were going to head down pretty aggressively in a mean reversion fashion. And in this case, you can see here on the actual, um, two down candles that put in this local swing low, you can see that momentum shifted on Stoke. You had a K over D cross. Now this is a regular Stoke. And then the up candle that actually confirmed the low did also not, because it didn't break the highs, it actually had a Stoke turn against it, even though Bitcoin did put in a low. So you favor the low as a move back to the upper second. We got that move. I talked about this on Friday anyway. That was kind of the target, as the upper second, above the upper second on a close. Then we look for a move to the highs at 45 or the monthly above at 45.5. But it didn't get that. Went sideways. Stoke continued to trend down day after day. And, now we're getting to the point where it's threatening to head outside of and close outside of the overbought zone. Now, this in combination with the weekly on the close open getting a cross to the downside was also telling you to be careful. It's not a time to take this consolidation and start longing in this consolidation at the highs. So this is more of a caution signal, and to pay attention to possible mean reversion, and that's what we're seeing. So, the loss of the upper second on the weekly and the lower term timeframes after the close open up here was also another clue, and that was at 43,240 or so. So once that area started to get lost in those, you'd probably have to go to the minute chart at this point to even see that really getting lost. But once it was lost, it was, pretty much game on to backtest this weekly in terms of even down to the open, which it hasn't done quite yet. And that's at just under $40,000. So below there, then we start to look to the highs here, 38.5 around the monthly. Then there's the close opens right there at the upper first at around that 37.5 to 37.7 weekly support area. Now, the 37.7, by the way, where Bitcoin was kind of hanging out and finding resistance, is going to be a really big area, because this area is right around these two close opens, and these were lows that were set on the weekly. So if you just kind of move this over, you can see where the primary resistance was and the zone of consolidation as well. So if we take a look at the left there, you can see that Bitcoin, ran up to 37.7 and lost it, but consolidated between that 36.2 and 37.7. That's on the Bitcoin in 60 seconds chart. That is this weekly, this set of weeklies right below the weekly monthly at 39 to 40 and that monthly at 38.5. And, Bitcoin found pretty heavy resistance there, spent 3 weeks running that 37.7 up to the monthly at 38.5. Once this area broke, it was game on to the upside. So in this case, with the upper first being there, this is going to be the most logical area to go retest. should we see continued downside. I would be wary of bounces, but they are not out of the question here. So if we go ahead and look at the 4 hour, any kind of close back above the upper second and or expansion of the upper second down below price, and then a tag of the lower second, not the upper second. We're on the downside move here. So we see that the lower second standard deviation on the 4 hours at 41.5, for instance. If Bitcoin hangs out and goes sideways on the lows and we see expansion of the lower second pass price, and then we get a dip into the lower second, I'd be looking for a possible reversal back up to test at least this consolidation and the low to mid $42,000 region. If it can get above there and regain the lower first, then I would be looking for a retest of the breakdown somewhere around the basis at that 43.2 weekly overhead. Or you can take the bottom side structure here at just under 43.2 at like the 43 to 43.2 area. Kind of give it a range here. But now that is if Bitcoin can hold this wick low at around 40,300, goes sideways, and then the lower second gets underneath price, and or it bounces and regains the lower second here, which is at that 41.5. Then I'd be looking to the lower first, right around the top side of this lower high. This lower high swing at 42.5. But that's what I'd be looking for in the shorter term. Right now, there's not much of a trade to the upside. It's going back down to retest this wick low. Now, why am I saying that? Be aware of this. Well, it's I wouldn't be taking the first bounce on this, to be quite honest, but you never know. And it's likely to remain bearish until it builds out some structure here. But it is already in the bearish control zone. Bounces are not out of the question. I do think they're going to be local bounces that get sold into until proven otherwise, or at least building some bullish divergence. So there is a bit of a qualifier there. If it does start to build bullish divergence here, then I'd look for it, to maybe run a little bit higher than this 42.5 and actually start testing that 43 to 43.2 low area, and maybe even swing the highs up here again, in the 44,000 to 44.5 area, and then we come back to it, see if it can actually break out above there. But in this case, it is it's still trending down on Stoke. So 41.1 is the momentum pivot currently, but I would want to see some bullish divergence building on this, and then start to build structure. You want to see structure, bullish divergence structure begin to be built and a new trend to form. Now, the only way a new trend is going to form as it currently stands is to at minimum take out this swing high, and then you have a swing high trend that can begin to form, right? So you have a trend break of the swing high. But in this case, the real last lower high now is up here, and it's all the way up here. Like everything else, this was your kind of close open highs up here, and it consolidated right around that area at 43.8. Above 43.8, then it would make a lot of sense to run the highs there on the 4 hour around 44.5, maybe higher up to that $45,000 area. But as it stands right now, I'm not looking for that. I'd actually want to see a close open trend break. So I'd want to see maybe a move up that even takes out the swing, gets up here, tests, and then fails, and then it breaks that, and then starts to, break that close open trend. This is just a continuation with an order block. And again, I would be aware of the order block here, which is, the swing high candle here from the move down. So there is a difference between swing highs and close open highs and lows. Swing lows and close open lows can be equal lows and equal highs, or part of continuous moves to the downside. And I believe even if you put a swing chart on, this is, no, it does call it a swing because that wick went so deep. So this would be your swing high right here at the order block. So I'd be very careful though, because I'd want to see a nice high structure built, and then that, higher low its way from there and build a new trend. But as it stands right now, at minimum, if it can take out that swing high at 42.5, then we would be looking up in the 43, 43.2, possibly 43.5, and higher into the $44,000 region. But right now it's just continuation to the downside. I would watch this structure if this wick low holds on a close at 40,300. If it starts getting closed below, then we're looking somewhere around this order block here at 39, around 39, 5 to 6 on the low side to around basically $40,000. Another, $300 or $400 discount off that low. Then there is some order blocks in here. Step it down to the next big area on the 4 hour, and you're in the 38 to 38.5 monthly region. So that's also a big weekly area around 39 to 40K. So be aware of it. And, until proven otherwise, this is expansion to the downside. And what I mean about the Bollinger Bands as well, if we start to see a cool down in BBWP, it's still expanding. So this move is still on its way to the downside at minimum to test the wick low at 40,300 currently. I would like it to dip at least into like $40,000, and because the weekly on spot is at 39, but some exchanges that weekly closed about $1,000 higher on derivatives in some cases. So I am giving that weekly on spot a little bit of room from 39 to 40, and it got front ran by about $300 due to liquidations not quite getting it to the zone. I would want to see that weekly retested. Now, if you see BBWP begin to cool down, this chart here, meaning the BBWP gets under the moving average gets a negative slope. Likely what you're seeing is one of two things. You're likely seeing mean reversion, or Bitcoin is above the lower second standard deviation, or possibly even above the lower first. Now, in that case, if we start to see it sooner rather than later, what I would be looking for is price going sideways, holding around these wick lows, maybe even dipping a little bit lower, but then the lower second standard deviation would be swooping under. That's where you would see the BBWP cool down, but it remains on the lows, and then I'd be looking for a retest of that lower second. So that's what I'm going to be looking out for next, is a little bit of a cool down in BBWP on the 4 hour, and then I want to see what has occurred. Has price moved up and regained some of these standard deviations, or did they swoop under price? Because then that's going to give me an idea of whether or not things are more likely to come down and retest the lower second. If we get an expansion through, usually the retest is a bit of a short-term time frame reversal. It doesn't mean that it's sustainable, but it's usually good for a nice bounce in the lower-term time frames. That's where I would actually be evaluating a scalp to the upside. Right now, it's all just downside angled. So if you're in longs, I would be very careful. It doesn't mean that you're going to be wrong, but it's just a lower probability in some of the longs. Even on a retest of the wick low, you're knife catching at that point. You're gambling. You don't know if that's going to hold. It's not even on a major support. So I would just be very careful. Not financial advice. You can do whatever the heck you want. But in my experience, the higher hit rate play would be waiting to see if it can regain the lower second, and then I'd be looking for where does it fail, and possibly a short position again if you aren't already in one. But in this case, I'd be looking for a possible scalp short, at least back to the current lows or somewhere around the closes of the current lows. And or it kind of goes sideways, holds on to this low. We get a bit of a momentum reset. We get a BBWP cool down, bands expand past price, and then we get a retest of the bands, preferably around, doesn't have to be, but it would be preferably around that weekly support area. I would actually like to see price test a little bit lower. I think it'd be healthy, and kind of go from there. So, all right. I hope that helps. I mean, this was cluing us in that this was headed down on BBWP, and this was very, very low BBWP, and it was expansion to the downside. So it was already telling you to get into a short position. It was breaking. It broke the local lows, broke that consolidation, getting on expansion. We also had already had Stoke telling us that it was already turned down. That was denoted by the 3-candle high structure up there off the upper second area up there that it tagged. Not a very difficult move to pick out. I know it did take many by surprise, but it was not anything unusual. You could see it coming, basically. The other thing is on this candle here, if we were to mark this candle, you can even go in some of the lower term time frames and you can see the failures, right? You can go on this one here that originally broke the lower second standard deviation on a close on the 4 hour, and you can see that this was a downtrend on the 15 minute, and it bounced after getting slight expansion to the downside, bounced up and failed at the basis band. So this, of course, is the 20 simple on the 15 minute. It started to trend below the lower first standard deviation, and then we got a nice move down here. And if we take a look, this is that next candle showing that there was expansion to the downside. That was that hourly candle that really set off the expansion to the downside on the chart over here as well. So we had lower term time frame clues that this was going to head down. It had already breached the lows of the consolidation, and the next thing that you're looking for is that expansion, and we got that confirmed expansion, an hour before, 45 minutes. This closed, and then it kept rejecting the lower second standard deviation here. So that was giving you about 45 minutes, saying that this is going to keep trending down at minimum, to, the next set of lows and lower after breaking this expansion. I know a lot of people were looking at this to hold up, but there was nothing, there's no highs. That this was all front running these highs back here in the low $42,000 to mid $42,000 area. So there wasn't a lot of structural support to prevent downside expansion past these lows over here. I wasn't really understanding. I was watching some people kind of chart this out, and they're like, "Oh, look, this is the zone. It's going to deviate it and then head up." And I don't know about that, especially on expansion to the downside when all of the oscillators turn down. Got multiple bearish divergence across all of these different high time frames. So the higher time frames, like the 4 hour as well, like this was not a bullish setup. This was all bearish divergences all over the place, right? So there was nothing. I couldn't really understand what I was seeing. I was also in between watching football and stuff, but I was keeping track of the discussion. I wasn't seeing what they were seeing. They were counting on, hidden bull divs to hold price up and send it to the highs. But when you're getting expansion to the downside, that's very difficult to do in terms of volatility. So I just was not seeing what many of, and they're people, I still respect them. I just, I have a different opinion, and I was reading things differently based on volatility metrics. And that's where your edge comes from. Your edge is going to come from volatility metrics. Bollinger Bands are a measure of volatility, and they can give you the bias for directional volatility. If you break a low on expansion, which this did on this candle here, broke the local consolidation lows, but yeah, it's above this low, but you're at minimum going to go test these lows. That's the thing. So because it broke these lows on expansion, you're looking to the next lows because it's above, it already took out those highs. So you look to the next lows, and then below there, you look to the next support area. And that was these highs and these lows down here. Yes, it wicked past it, but that's not really relevant. That you got to take level by level. So, volatility was the edge here. If it swung this low, it needed to get bought back up and do a V recovery right back to it. And that's where it would, be just a deep swing of the lows, and then regain the local consolidation, not even this low side structure. It would need to regain the local consolidation higher in order to go and start sweeping the highs and higher towards the wick high at 45, and then the monthly at 45.5, and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of confluence here. There's bear divs all over the place on the medium-term time frames. There's bear divs on the daily. There's, I believe, we're going to start seeing, no, we're not going to see any bear. This is the other thing. So for those that, on one hand, we had a lot of people that were, looking for a local swing of the lows and then pop back up to the local high and higher. I just showed you how that really wasn't the picture being painted on the lower term time frames. But on the flip side of that, this is a downside move currently that is turning the weekly momentum to the downside. But what I would be cautious of for the bears here is a momentum shift back to the upside, especially because structure is still in an uptrend, and this is not even a high yet as it stands on the weekly. So this is still very likely, to be able to test up to the upside at minimum until I would give it until it drops that upper first, because then you'd have a nice 3 candle structure here, and that would be around that 37.7, 37.5 area. And then we just look for higher lows in relation to the last low that was put in at 26.5. But this is mean reversion as it stands right now. So it's not. It went a little bit deeper, and but there's no real issues with this price action. This is fairly straightforward. It's just a matter of how long term is the correction. And as it stands right now, we're only on one bar on the weekly so far. So we need to see how this week plays out. And that's going to take patience. There's probably going to be a lot of speculation in the markets, and oh my God, it's over, everything's done, it's going to crash. And it might technically crash. It went up quite a lot. So for those that are buying the top, they're going to be shitting their pants, quite honestly. But if it does continue to head down, but even like on the 5-day, which is going to close today, we can see that the upper first is at 37,800. It's probably going to be around $38,000 here. Upper second, did get closed above, so continued expansion, but this move started to cool down. But if it remains above this upper first, it's going to keep testing higher. From the 5-day perspective, if it loses that, then we're looking somewhere around the 32.4 area, where the basis is coming in just above that, daily, weekly, monthly area at 31.8 that I've talked so much about. That would be a nice retest of that untested daily. And the reason why I talk about that daily, and I'm not going to show it right this second, but it was part of a distribution structure, which is from the way down in the bear market. So I would want to see it tested. Doesn't mean it's going to get tested, but that's a confluent area to get tested. But right now, the basis is coming in right around there. The 5-day lower first is now finally ever so slightly above the higher low back here. And that's all the way down at 26,500, with the lower first now coming in around 26,700. So let's say things absolutely nuked from here and went down to the lower first. It would actually be right around that low. So that would be dangerous, but that's not what I'm seeing right now. Now, that being said, the 5-day is ready to turn down on any closures below 42,870. So basically 42,900 to $43,000 today. And we don't currently have any. We would also get an SMA signal break. So, this would be starting to look a little bit more like we're going to get some higher term time frame mean reversion, probably some maybe downtrending structure built on the daily, or further built on the daily, I should say, as we do currently have a trend break to the downside. But bull control zone is at $38,000. There's the edge of the bullish control zone. Again, that's in a confluent area around that monthly at 38.5. So definitely not out of the question to head back that way and retest. The 4-day, this is not the kind of candle you wanted to see on a 4-day close, and this was one that came in on Thursday, headed into Friday. So close, or no, this just opened. This closed with the weekly candle. My apologies. So this isn't that, this is basically, you get above it, you're going to get continuation. You get below it, you're going to head back for some mean reversion, in this case to the upper first standard deviation, which is currently at that $39,000 to $40,000 weekly area. Below there, the basis is now coming in towards this low order block over here from the move up, and that's at 34,750. So that is a weekly support area as well. would really want to. I really want to see those prices get retested, because this move was sideways and up, a little bit of euphoria going on with some of those spot buyers. I would want to see that kind of retested. We're going to see the 3-day paint a top here, most likely today at close. Now, it came right back down and it tapped on the 3-day upper first standard deviation at that 40,300 area. It's currently trading above, so it did pull that upper first up ever so slightly here, but a nice strike right on the upper first after, closing underneath the upper second, which gives us a range, and that range being the 44,700 area to that upper first at around 40,300 or so. If that is lost, then we're looking somewhere around the basis to get tested, and this is now at $36,000, so right in the thick of this sideways and up consolidation. Below there, the lower first is above the highs now, and I would love to see this area get tested. It's actually right at 31,800 now. And from the 3-day perspective, we can see that there is a momentum shift here on the 3-day, and it's going to get continuation at the end of today's closure at 44,100. If it can close back above there, of course, it can mitigate that. But we have, higher highs here. The last higher low on the 3-day is right here at that 34,750 weekly. So be aware of that. If it was to break, that would be a structural break. There is no bearish divergence going on here just yet, so I'm not overly concerned about any of what's going on, even the momentum shift. 2-day, this is a nice top. The 2-day isn't even calling this swing over here as a swing high to swing low. I still would, and that's the same area as the 3-day at the 34,750. It's calling this one all the way down here at that 26,500. In this case, closing below the upper first, no big deal. I'd be looking right back to the basis, which, by the way, is right above these wick highs of this consolidation to expansion. And that's coming in at, guess where, 38,400 to 500 right at the monthly. Below there, the lower first is also right at this close open of this swing low, and that is coming in at 35.5. And that swing low, of course, is the 34,750. This is fine, quite honestly. 44,100 is the momentum pivot on the 2-day. This is what you want to see. This is, like I said, opportunity for those that are willing to take it. Now, this is the other thing that I've mentioned before. I said this last week, so be aware of what's going on. We're still getting expansion, meaning now prices mean reverting back to the basis area in this case. As close over close, the basis will move up. If price continues down, it might just meet that basis before it even closes, but in this case, and or get under. But in this case, because of where the lower first is, we can mean revert right back to the lower first in this consolidation, and you're going to see BBWP cool all the way down, right? Then we look for possible trend shift, right? Does it break this low? Does it close below this low on a close? Does it break the wick low on a swing? And so on and so forth, because then that would be below the lower first, and thus, we'd be looking for expansion to the downside. But in this case, this was upward expansion, this is mean reversion, and this is going to present some opportunities, I believe. The other thing to look for is, say it comes down and it hits this basis, maybe even wicks down or gets down to the lower first, and we do not see the moving average curl over. So let's say BBWP gets under the moving average, and the moving average does not curl over, and we see a low put in on the 2-day. Well, then we look and see if we get re-expansion before the moving average has a chance to curl over. Now, this is where it's a 2-day time frame. So, we've got 2 days for this to even close now. And it would take at least 2-day closing closes for this to, get under and pull the moving average down with it. So we would need to see the BBWP under the moving average at minimum for, usually two closures, depending on how aggressive the downside move would be or the mean reversion is. In this case, as it stands right now, I'd be looking for two-day closures underneath the moving average to turn the moving average down. Then we're looking for a little bit longer consolidation, probably through the rest of December into January, and then we come back to it and start looking for where could this possibly expand, either to the upside or downside. Where's trend? Where is trend in relation to support and resistance, and where then can we look for expansion, breaking highs or lows? And in this case, this is telling me this is a good mean reversion move as it stands right now. And if we see a quick move down and then a really aggressive bounce back up, I would be looking for things to resume testing at minimum the local high structure. Right now, of course, there's a downside move going on in the lower term timeframes, and that's where we'll see, trend shifts happen, and then come back to it later. And to kind of wrap this all up, as it stands right now, sorry that was loud. This is a really expensive microphone stand, and I guess maybe I'm just gonna have to buy something else or try a different product because this thing sucks. Anyway, the daily trend is technically broken. We have, inevitably a lower low, either on a close or a swing. I mean, you can't rule out rallies back to 30 or 42, 280 or 300 where this closed, but at minimum, until we see the close today, it's a trend break on the daily, but it's all mean reversion, and the real base of the structure would be, built on any bounces that fail to get past this high up here. And in this case, it is technically a lower high swing, so lower lower high swing to lower low. You'd be looking for a lower high on a bounce. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen, but we've seen this move remain very powerful. But since that 26.5 strike, had 26,000, then 26.5 at the lower first, and we talked all about that move on the way up. And just to revisit one last thing here before we get moving on to other time frames here, or other time frames. We've covered most of the time frames. We don't need any more time frames for Bitcoin right now. So 43,900 on the daily. This is mean reversion. It is confirmed currently. So move right back to the top side would likely get sold into pretty hard. Doesn't mean it would or couldn't make higher highs. So I wouldn't rule it out if we did see an aggressive bounce from here. But realistically, what we need to see is some consolidation on price and then move on. Otherwise, it's just going to get more and more volatile within the range. Yeah. And I want to see this cool down. This is exactly what I want to see. Mean revert back to the basis. Kind of want to see it even go through and hit that lower first. But if it holds the basis, kind of chops around, goes sideways, then we can gauge expansion. And as long as it's above this breakout area over here, around that, around those highs at 38.5 to 37.7, it's still looking good to keep consolidating in this range. And in fact, now that I'm looking at it, there is a few other things I want to look at while we're here. And that is, 50% of this last swing, this last real swing low to this high here is coming in at 39,540. So, and then the 618 is, kind of right where price is trading here as it's heading down to some of the targets that we've talked about. We can see, let's go ahead over here to this little swing. Where would we be? Yeah. Okay, so from the swing of the first consolidation, so we had the move up and then a nice little swing higher low, and then it began its bit of a parabola bottom. Well, this actually would be the 618 right at the basis at around 40,150 or so. That would actually meet the criteria, and then the 50% just below it at 38 738.8 region. And you can see that the 382 then is coming in right at that lower first. And this is log scale and this is a log fib, but it's a daily, so it's not really, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So yeah, this actually, and the reason why, for those that don't maybe understand why I'm drawing the fib like this, is we had the move off the lows and then we had the expansion and then the first swing low, is kind of where I'm, basing this off of, to this swing high, which is, the big high up here that was just put in at 45. So if we're looking at the top side of this move for mean reversion back to the basis for consolidation locally, at minimum, a retest of even the 382 would be very bullish. Obviously, that is just you flip the fib, that's your 618. And that is coming into a key area right around 37.5 to 37.7 weekly. So again, we're just kind of rounding back to these two weeklies down here being the really big area, or you can take the top side weekly here to the monthly. This gap between them, 37.7 to 38.5 and 40K, 39 to 40K at the weekly, just above this zone. It's going to be kind of the big zone of interest. And I'm actually going to mark that. Maybe I'll find a way to explain this in the Bitcoin in 60 seconds video later. So that's going to be kind of the key area that I'm going to be looking for. And if price does get there, I'm going to be looking at a lot of those lower term timeframes to evaluate what's going on. All right, so yeah, that actually lines up really nicely so far with the volatility of the bands here. Let's go ahead and turn the swing chart off. And I think that's going to do it for right now. There was something else I wanted to say. All right. Let's just go ahead and move on to look at some other stuff, and then we'll come back to Bitcoin maybe later. I think I've explained everything that I wanted to explain about it. Let's go ahead and do Dixie, and we can see that Dixie is still, wicking that area. So we had expansion, just like Bitcoin got upside expansion, Dixie got this nice downside expansion, of course. And when we see it mean reverting, where is it mean reverting? The upper first, whereas in Bitcoin, I'd want to see it mean revert to somewhere around the basis to lower first while holding structure. Now, for this to be bearish, well, Dixie has to hold the upper first and this 104.21 as resistance to the upper second here at this other swing high up top here. And that would be at 104.5 to 104.60, around that upper second standard deviation on the daily. If it does get above there, then I would be looking for an extension of this move up to around 105, but I think it would start to turn there. Doesn't mean it would, but that's where I would be looking for it to start turning. 103.27, this is going to get very dangerous for Dixie because it's going to almost look like it's going to be a bearish reset because it really hasn't done a whole lot here on the lows, which more than likely would lead to it heading back down and trying to hold this low. As it stands right now, to the downside, we've got our upside targets. If it can break 104.21, we're looking at 104, 50 to 60 area above there, we're looking at 105. To the downside, if it does drop the basis here at 103.68, that would also, no, it wouldn't quite, at the end of today, it might turn the Stoke to the downside, but that's only if that area is dropped today as Stoke is moving up and price moves back down. We're not currently seeing that. It's just kind of wicking around these highs now and consolidating in the lower term timeframes. But if it does drop 104.68, be aware of this close open right here at 104.63. It drops that, it's going to head right back to the wick lows around the lower first at 104.23, possibly turning that oscillator to the downside. And then below there, we're looking to the lower second somewhere around 102.80 to the actual low wick there, and lower at 102.5 to possibly below there. I'd be looking for re-expansion down to 102. But we did hit our primary downside target there after 103, and that was 102.50, and then below there would have been 102. But we have to wait to see what's going to happen. That 102 might still be in the cards. And looking at the weekly, it's again, the weekly's it's going to start compressing here, so it might just be setting up for a range. 105.80 would turn the weekly back up, so it's still pressured down as it stands right now. The 2-week is also going to be pressured down, and this is going to be closing this week, so this is going to be something I want to watch coming into the end of the week and open next week. It's at 106.43 right now for the 2-week, and pretty aggressively downside angled on price, but it's all right back to the basis band. So this could bullishly reset if it starts to put in a low on the 2-week. So it's something to watch. It's nothing concrete right now. This is a compression around the lows, and then we come back to it later in the week, specifically Wednesday when I'm live streaming again to double check on it. But I'll say it again, above 104.21, we're looking to 105 or 104.50 to 60. Above there, we're looking at 105. To the downside, drop 103.60. We're looking to the momentum pivot on the daylight around 103.20, and then below there, probably a run of the lows in the upper 102 region to the actual low there at 102.5. If we go and look at gold, we talked about this area that it is now trading right back towards. There is a zone here. My arrow is already there from the last time that we talked about this, and that is bulls and gold bugs want to see 1980 to 1970 realistically hold up. If it does lose this wick low, which is, to be fair, at 1965, then it's going to be 1950 lower second strike, which if it starts to expand past, you got to be aware of the 1940 to the wick low there at 1928, which is 1930 basically. So you can just take it in $10 chunks. You want to see 70 to 80 hold up. Below there, it's danger. Eyes on that wick low at 1956. Also, if it does lose 1980, that's the lower first, as you can see. This is where you want to see things hold up. Here, too, technically the lower second, but I'd prefer to see the lower second above that 1980 wick low, 1977 wick low or so. If it does, or 1965 wick low. If it does breach that area, then, it's still got a chance above this last low. If it loses this last low around this order block region, it's going to be $1,900 pretty soon, in my opinion. This is exactly what I want to see. Lower first, second area, maintaining support. And then if it can put in a low, you'll see this momentum pivot will drastically change. And it's currently at $2,075, but we're headed into a compression on the daily here as it currently stands. And if it can put in a daily low somewhere around the 1970 to 80 or maintain that wick low on a close, or you step it down to the next big area, and that would be 1928, then I would be looking for it to start to shift momentum over time. But as it currently stands, the move is ongoing. It is in a bouncy region. 12-hour is getting expansion to the downside. It is critical, so I would be watching the 12-hour close over close. It's at $2,000. We're seeing slight expansion to the downside on the 12-hour, but it's not anything too crazy just yet. It is fully confirmed, but it's in the zone that you'd want to see it in for a possible reversal. This is where, again, like what I was explaining on Bitcoin for the 4-hour, you want to watch to see if price holds this low, and then the lower second gets under price, and then it retests it and then bounces off of it. So, or it heads up, and then, we still get downside expansion, and then it retests it after it heads up a little bit. As it stands right now, this is the first dip into this zone. and its continued expansion until proven otherwise, at least through the close of today into the open of tomorrow. 4 hours still expanded to the downside, but again, it is right at that support area. And we can see that the possibilities, so compression to expansion, there we go. So I was telling you, this was, as soon as it lost the support here, it expanded down. And that was at 2016 bucks. That's that weekly area. And it headed down just to the next, support structure. So if it can hold this support structure, and we see now it's trying to regain that lower second, then we either look for it to pop up and then try to retest it, or pop up and at least start to head back up. Typically, if you see it pop right back up to like the basis, it's a bearish retest. So typically you want to see it pop up, kind of maintain its trend to the downside, and then try a trend reversal from the low area. In this case, the lower first is right at 1996. 4 hour is still getting expansion to the downside. It's in the critical regions though. 1986 would pop this back up. You do want to see a little bit of a 3-candle low. I suspect this is going to head down a little bit more or screw around this area for a little bit longer before trying a substantial upside move. But I know what I'm going to be watching, and I hope I made clear what I'm going to be watching to you in this case. And that is, if this area does hold up, then we're looking at continuation of expansion to the downside of the bands, past price, retest of support, lower second reversal. And the reason why that is, and I say this every time, but lower second is going to be either a continuation area, especially when you break a support, right? So break the support on the close, that's continuation, or you're going to see it reverse. In this case, came down to the lower first, second area around support and reversed back up to the upper around resistance and reversed back down and finally got expansion to the downside. So it's either going to be continued expansion to the downside or retest on expanded bands that then holds up as support and causes a reversal. Okay. So, all right. Let's go ahead and take a look at traditional markets real quick here. I'm not going to spend too much time on traditional markets today. Maybe a little bit more on Wednesday, but we're seeing continuation of what we saw on Friday's candles. And, it's up in the oversold zone. That's not a big deal. It's more about volatility. And we see that Dow is currently holding the upper first standard deviation, giving us that upside target at the upper second at around 36.6 to 36.7. Of course, the high side there is coming in right around the all-time high. So it's likely if it breaks above there, it's going to get an extension. But you probably want to see a little move back down and then an extension up. In this case, just sideways and up. March, if it does lose the upper first, I would look somewhere around the consolidation at 36,000. Below there, I'd be looking for mean reversion, maybe a little bit of a gap fill on the daily here, back to 35.5. And below there, we're looking at 35,000. So pretty simple stuff. Let's go ahead and take a look at NASDAQ. Oh, look, that looks like continuation. We had a nice, beautiful compression. And, this could either march it up, but if it does close above the upper second, well, guess what? We're going to be looking for continuation. 16,200 would do it. It's currently trading a slight bit below there. Or no, I'm sorry. 16,213 is the expansion kickoff event for NASDAQ here. And it's currently trading $3 above. If it does lose the upper first, I'd be looking for a retest of the basis somewhere around 15,900 to 16,000. Currently, it's looking as though it wants to push the bands to the upside here. We have very low BBWP. We have a cross to the upside. I think NASDAQ's giving away what's going on here. And that's, 16,000 is the momentum pivot currently. It's got the higher low in there already. It's looking for upside expansion, obviously, to look left. And it's, it's going to be somewhere around 16,500 to 16,600. And then the all-time high up there at 16,708. And possibly go for 17 if it can maintain expansion to the upside. Yeah. Sorry. You guys weren't muted over there, so you were talking in my ear for a second. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. All right. So if it did lose the basis, I'm looking back to the lower first, somewhere around this last low. That'd be 15,750 area below there, 5 to 600. Possibly a gap fill down there to that 15.5. Yeah. But it's upside angled right now. Looks like it wants to kick off expansion to the upside as well. It's just kind of just getting started. That's likely going to be a little bit counter to the 2-day as it stands, but the 2-day is at the all-time high area, so it's right up there around 16.6, 16.7 area, possibly 16.8, 9. Go for 17 if it does start to push it. But it does look at minimum like it wants to test that area. Yes. Yep. So covered the targets on that. Pretty easy, pretty simple stuff. We're looking at a very similar setup here. 463 to 465 still the upside target for SPY here. It is above the upper first. If it did lose that around 458 to 460, then I would be looking for some kind of a move back around wherever the basis is. It's currently right around this last low at 455. If it did get there at 455, that would give us an additional downside target to around 450 at the lower first. So just be aware of that. But if it does continue up, we're looking 463 to 465 above there, 470 to 480 or so, and so on and so forth. This is looking legit like it wants to go. NASDAQ, might be the one painting the picture here. Yeah, 465 to 470, 470 to 480 or so. And then above 480, I think it's, above 480, we're looking at an all-time high. So it's right there. It's right on the edge. Doesn't mean that they can't pull back and consolidate a little bit or, swing back below this, but for where things are with NASDAQ, I would want to see SPY continue. Still bullish. 460 is going to be the momentum pivot. It's, a little over 1.5 points above right now. It doesn't mean too much until we see the close, but just the etchings of expansion to the upside right now. So, and this is sideways and up expansion. The only way this would get downside expansion would be below 450 and subsequently the lower second here at 445. And still, that would just be a gap fill reversal, in my opinion, at least in the lower term timeframes. We'd have to see trend develop after that, but 440 would be the main target down there by the lower third. And then come back to it. There's probably bounces. I don't think it would be just a straight move down, but we've seen weirder stuff. I mean, just the move up has been sideways and up, right? It's kind of like what Bitcoin was doing. So that's going to be the bulk of the analysis done today. Spent a lot of time on Bitcoin, and I hope that I made my thoughts pretty clear on this. There's a retest of the wick lows. If we're going to get continuation, this is going to be it. We're seeing expansion right now, actually. So maybe we'll get that test that I've been looking for. So let's go ahead and take a look. The basis is at, it's going to move down probably somewhere around the $40,000 level, which is, to be fair, the big area I'm looking for is 39 to 40K. So let's see. What is everybody's thoughts? Let's go ahead and we'll keep this on here and just monitor it on the 15-minute. And yep, looks like continuation down to our key levels. Very good. Basically what I was explaining before. Now, it could just swing those levels and pop back up. So this is going to be something to watch. We'll turn on volume as well. So we are seeing volume come in here on the 15-minute. And if it did pop up, you can swing this on a close. Doesn't really matter if it pops back up pretty soon. You know, the next high to change the downtrend currently here would be 41,100 or so. Yeah. But it looks like it would like to accelerate to the downside. Let's go ahead and check on open interest, as a matter of fact. I bet you some longs are getting freaking nuked here, too. Not as bad as I thought. We do see a nice gap down in open interest. Maybe get down there to a 10 and a half. I'd like to see 10 and a half again. That'd be good. What's funding doing here? Oh, longs are doing the predictable thing and trying to catch the knife. So funding is coming down. It was getting very aggressive in this lower low, lower high hourly move. That was another clue that things were not looking quite right on the charts there. Let's go ahead and turn on the tunes here while we price watch for a moment. And you can see that it did swing that low. What's momentum looking like? Momentum is looking like it's, you know, this area could end up turning into something interesting. Not quite sure just yet, but could be interesting. And then we kind of come back to it. My music is not working correctly here. What's going on? All right, let's see. Let me see if I can fix this. Okay, and then we're gonna read the chats here while the music's going. Okay. We're gonna go public chats first today, guys, so give me a second. Can we just dump it already? 39K would be hard to get. I don't think 39K is too hard to get. Thank you for encouraging everyone to hit the likes. So hello No Name, hello Cheryl, hello Bobby, hello Don, hello Jedi, and to the others that aren't actually currently chatting, hello. Yes, go ahead and hit the likes. That does help the channel out. Information's all free. I don't do any paid stuff, so it's just educational material and looking at charts, in my opinion. You do need to sub, yeah, if you want to chat. Thank you for reminding everyone. That's only because I don't want spammers in here. And of course, yes, subbing is free. Let's see. Yeah, nice bounce off that 40. Yes, I agree. That was a very good bounce off of 40,300 so far, but it doesn't do anything so far. Not until we see something structurally change. I mean, right now in the 15 minutes above, you know, basically 41.1. Not seeing too many questions here. Ready for a BTC sale? Yeah. RIP. How do you decide the best time frame to look at to see a downtrend? Well, I mean, we start with the higher term time frames. So Cheryl asks, you know, I always start from the context of, you know, the higher term time frames. You know, the monthlies, the weekly, the daily, and then from the daily I go down to, typically I'll check the 12-hour. the 6 and 4 hour, and then the hourly. And then from there, in the context of those higher term timeframes, I go and I evaluate, the 15-minute versus the hourly versus where the 4 hour is, so on and so forth. Yeah. Hello, Ivan. Not scrubbing through the time frames, Jedi, but being methodical about it. You have to have a reason for why you're looking. I understand what you're saying, but it's a method. It's methodology is looking at where things are in the lower term time frames and how they fit into the time frames above them. So the 15-minute to the hourly to the 4 and 6 hour, this 4 and 6 hour to the 12 hour, the 12 hour to the daily in the context of the weekly and in between time frames, right? And then of course the weeklies to the monthly and so on and so forth. And right now it's an uptrend on the weekly. There's no danger there at all. This is as it stands at this particular moment, it is all opportunity, not financial advice, but for those who want to pick out the lower term time frame trend reversals for a move back up at minimum for mean reversion, and would classically be considered a bearish retest. That's where there might be some waiting involved, but it's could be getting there soon. We don't know yet. Deep analysis today. Nice. Yep. That must have been when I was still looking at Bitcoin, because it's the only one I really dove deep on. I did go down time frames in gold a little bit. Yes, the microphone stand. I apologize. This thing is like, this was an expensive microphone stand, and all I can hear through it is the freaking springs and like the other shit that's in there. It's all encased though, like in the thing. Like, I'm just gonna get one that just has smooth bearings that you can tighten instead of the springs, because it's really annoying. And I do apologize for the noise, as I like made a bunch of noise. Yeah, it's not WD-40. Yeah, WD-40 duct tape. Bobby with the hashtag fibs don't work. Yeah, don't tell the fibs that they don't work. Yeah, because they do. Oh, Cheryl left, so she didn't get to hear me answer her question. Oh God, yeah, the Bills play the Cowboys this coming weekend. Did my screen freeze? Did it? Did my stream freeze? I don't think so. I'm only looking at the 15-minute. We're just watching. Price didn't move for a little while. It was just stuck there for a little while. I don't know. You'll have to let me know. Is it okay? Can you see the screen okay? From my side, it's showing that it's sending out just fine. Oh, I wonder. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was going on. My apologies. Yeah, so, I mean, this is a retest of the lows. As it stands right now, I have a question that's not coming from the public chats here. This is just a retest of the lows. Now, if it's going to get expansion down below it, this is pretty expanded on the 15 minutes. So, I mean, if it takes out 41.1, it's probably going to go retest around 41.5, maybe up to 41.8, 42K around here. And if it can get above there, then it's going to maybe test a little bit deeper into the 42s. But one of the big things, momentum is shifting. This is likely setting up for a bit of mean reversion. I mean, me personally, what do I think? I mean, what I personally think isn't, it doesn't really matter. It's what the chart is telling us. 41,232 is the momentum pivot on the hourly, and if it does, you know, close below, you know, the lower second, then it's going to indicate that it's going to keep trying to run this low unless it can, you know, close open above it. And that is currently at 40,800. You know, and again, from the hourly perspective, it's going to be trending down on any closes below. You know, it's still trending expansion to the downside below the lower first at 41.5 or so. So if we can get above 41.5, then it's at least mean reversion somewhere around the basis of 42, like we were just saying, 41.8 to 42K or so. And then watch it above there. Then we start looking at 42.5, and then possibly a retest of 43 to 43.2, which is the weekly up here. It's and 42.8 is actually the daily upper first standard deviation. So be aware of rejections between 41.8. I'm sorry, 42.8 and 43.2. Above there, then it's, you know, it's right back in a range. But you know, this is, so far it's a reach for the daily basis band. Nothing too crazy going on here. Yes, it broke the swing low, and technically is going to be a lower low, but in the context of higher term time frames, it's just mean reversion as well. So nothing that I'm too concerned about, quite honestly. I'm not in Discord, sir. And I'm not talking to people in Discord. So the questions that are coming to me privately are from people who cannot log on to the public streams. The public streams are either like blocked because of where they work, so they can't get on YouTube or Twitch or any of the various streaming platforms. So instead, I have them parseced in, and it's that's not talking to Discord people on. These are people that would normally be chatting in the chat with you guys. By the way, Parsec works really good. Not necessarily an endorsement of them. I don't have any affiliation with them, but it works really well. Pretty impressed with it. Yeah, 40,380 on the 15-minute. So, yeah. Could it go for the 41.1? Yeah, if it does, it's gonna head up more. 41.3 to 5. I mean, basis band to. Well, it's a little bit wider, but this is likely going to head down. So probably looking at like 41.3 to 5 in that area, somewhere around this last high. Above there, and that'd be 41.8 to 42K. And again, those are all weeklies. I mean, the weekly is at 41.8 here. So if it can regain the weekly on the daily, then we're looking at you know, this area here. 41.8 to 42K. Above there, we look to, you know, 42.5 to 43. You know, and that's right in here, around that upper first on the daily at 42.800 to the weekly at 43.2. Above 43.2, then we look to 43.5 for a retest up here of the actual breakdown. So it'd be above these two candles that closed right at the 43.2. And then we start looking to this area at 43.5. If it can regain the breakdown, then it's probably going to run the highs. And that's just kind of how price works. It's how the auction works. Other than that, I'd be looking for things to, you know, hang out at the basis and then scope out bounces that possibly have bearish retest potential. You know, and then if it regains those areas on a bearish retest and flips them bullish, then we're looking for it to head up. Cool. Okay. Yes, Bonds we'll take a look at on Wednesday. Yeah, we'll take a look at the bond market on Wednesday. I mean, we can scrub through it right now. It's a little bit of movement today, not too much. But not, yeah. We'll evaluate. I want to see how the early part of the week goes with the bond market first, before really giving you my. I want to give you a little bit more informed take. I want to see price action develop in terms of what's going on there. And then yeah, if you're coming in late, we covered traditional markets very quickly. They're doing what we expected. Gold is right in the area that we had targeted. Now, if it can hold it, good. Bulls will likely have a lower first bounce, and then come back to it later. That wick high is very high on gold, so just be aware of it. Yeah, I got a request from Bobby here to look at the yen. And this is, we've seen spikes like this on the yen. I'm not overly impressed with this, right? Even while the dollar was trending down, the yen was doing the same. I think it's likely that it put in a high, at least for a little bit. We're looking at, we could do it the other way. We could do USD JPY as well. So, what do we want? Look up here. USD to JPY is bouncing, right? At the same time, obviously, we were looking at the inverse correlation there. Well, we're looking at the same thing, right? Just from the opposite side. So it doesn't really matter. This was a downtrend or an uptrend breakdown, right? So go back up for a retest, maybe 150. Maybe 150. Maybe it swings the lower highs a little bit lower around one. Yeah, that's 150. It's basically 150, 149 and a half. I'm not too enamored with this. If we look at the weekly, this is just a spike down to the lower second on the weekly, probably compression. If it's going to put in a high, 30 swung this high over here. We're looking at something, I wouldn't necessarily be looking for a breakout. That upper first second area needs to break cleanly for this to go on a run. But it's more about what are the implications. The implication at this point is that the yen has been in a prolonged downtrend, and can it break it and start to reverse? Can it climb out? My suspicion is no, but that has, unless you're trading this forex pair, which, to be fair, there's probably is people with this is a straight downtrend to possibly continue a downtrend, but the daily's looking like it wants to bottom out and bounce for right now. The lower term time frames don't look very good, and this is a rejection at the lower first right now, which kind of tells me it's going to maintain trend, but that doesn't, 142 is the pivot. What's the 2-day looking like? 2 days, 145. That's closing today, but it's about the BBWP. It's about that volatility. So this is a breakdown after a nice prolonged uptrend. It's good as long as it's above 138, 140. If it starts to lose that, it's gonna get into the danger zone. There's two highs here. Nice solid low put in there after a double test of this downside order block area. Got 1, 2, 3. Got a lower high. Got trend break, higher high, higher low, higher high. Right around, we'll call it 136 to 140. It needs to hold that. If it's above that, it can consolidate and screw around. If it can regain and maintain, it already did regain that 145. So that would be the next high area, 146.50. Then I'd be looking for it to retest somewhere around 150, 149, low 149, and then come back to it 150 to 153. If it can break out above 153, then its fortunes will change. But again, this is painting the picture that actual JPY value is going down, right? So, and that's prolonged downtrend. So that means putting in a high, we're looking for it to come down. But as long as it's above 0.00667 cents or so to 0.007 cents, 0.7 of a cent, then we're looking for it to possibly try to move up over time. Maybe it's the big ass double bottom that they've all been waiting for above 007. It would be, but it's not above there right now. So let's look at the Japanese yen. Oh, hey, this looks like a giant distribution back to like 0.006, 0.006, to be quite honest. I mean, it could double bottom here on the monthly. Again, it's got to get above 0.007. 0.7 of a cent, and then it could potentially head back up. Double bottom, possibly double top in the long term, but it's so heavily manipulated by the banks that they might want to stabilize it there. So maybe that's value right there. Woohoo. Yeah, woohoo. I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of a lower high here on Bitcoin and then break that to start the trend shift. That doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. It's still expansion and trend to the downside below the lower first, yeah. Manipulation? No way. Come on, man. Yeah, I know, isn't it? It's crazy to think about, huh? Who could possibly be manipulating it? Oh, never mind. So when you have like this kind of a trend, then you get something like this, and then a little one, and then you break it, and then build that trend up, and then go for the retest, which would be somewhere around here. That would be like your 42.5 retest, this local range. This would be your trend break. Either got 2 or 3 spots. So you got this guy, or if it was to keep trending down, you got that guy. And then for this, you'd look for, oh look, what's that remind you of? Anyway, or just nukes. That's not necessarily what I'm looking for right here. It is in very bouncy territory around that look like. All those people that lost their money are like, I'm going to make it all back in one trade, man. And then they're going to long it. build up longs. I mean, we can just look at open interest around here. Is it still headed down? Is it headed up? It's headed down on the move down. Tells me that shorts are probably entering on the wick low, hoping for a break, and then they just got it bounced into. We won't know until price actually either breaches that low, that wick low on a close, and or moves up in a bigger way above, probably like the local, this lower high, probably, if I had to guess. So if we were really looking for that, I'd be looking like somewhere maybe they got their stops here, which would be like the basis band. That's around 41.2. And that, but if there is any kind of a close above this guy here, we're looking at, a technical trend break that you'd want to see get above this next wick high to go test further, so on and so forth. There's also a little bit of a zone here. If you really want to get into it, like there's a little bit of a zone here between this, for the move right there. And that's, that's around 41.3, and that's bracketing the basis. I suspect that if it was to spike up there, we start seeing shorts come out. At minimum, they try to short like 41.5 at the close open up here. And then if it gets above, they're going to propel things to like 41.8, 42K for a retest. Right around the weekly. Other than that, that's like the way that I'd be looking at it right now. But as it stands, there's not much happening. Yeah. Could very easily just nuke down through. Yes. Doesn't mean it's going to. It's like right around a weekly at 39 to 40K, depending on your exchange. And technically, 40,150 is like a front run of that weekly area, around 39.40. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's where you go to, like the 5 minute. You can see it's headed up, but it's putting in a high, so it's likely to head back down the retest. Still just a downtrend. Nothing interesting, but now we have lower criteria for a possible trend shift, right? And that's at 40,795 or so. So if you're using a 5 minute, you're now looking at this and you're saying like, oh, okay, that's your downtrend break right there. Then you can just drag that across and see where you are, right? This is red for other reasons. It's from another chart, but I mean, like right now, you're price bracketing, yeah. So I'm getting questions from other people that are not in the public chats again. So some that are newer. So you kind of got a zone down here. So get below this high volume wick low, and it's going to get continuation to the downside. So yeah, below this higher volume wick low, that was right here. And then it's down into the weekly support, 39K, most likely 40K. Is it critical? I mean, no, not really. I mean, the daily's in the driver's seat right now. The 4 hour is got plenty of room. BWP hasn't ran out yet. 41.5 is pretty far away from price now. It's $1,000 away from price, so this is not threatening to close and turn anytime soon. 2 hours critical, but we're looking at possible expansion past this low into the mid 39s to 39K. 42, 300 is the pivot. Hourly is still down, and 41.300 is the pivot there. Move is just, it's continuation right now. It's still getting expansion. So 30 minute, 40,300, 15 minute, we're looking at possibly trying to hold this low area. But below that this wick low, this most recent lower low, then yeah, it's gonna push down further. Continuation. Yep. Yeah, I mean, at minimum to swing it. Be continuation at minimum to swing it, but in general, if it closes below, it's gonna keep heading down, searching for liquidity. Good question. Yep. Yeah. All right. I think that's going to be it for today, huh? If you did not see the early part of the stream, I covered Bitcoin and this move down in pretty good detail, I think. If you do have any questions that remain, go ahead and message me publicly on x.com. Leave a comment in the video. I can always answer you there as well. And if there's no more questions, I'm going to wrap things up, and I'll give it just a minute to see if anybody does have any more questions before I start wrapping things up. But you'll have to let me know. Looking for structure change on the 5 and 15 minute. Yep. All right. Yep. Just bang my knee on the desk. That felt good. All right, everyone. Well, I appreciate everybody hanging out. You're more than welcome to hang out for the after stream tunes. They'll be running for a little while. Of course, if you didn't see the early part of the stream, you can always scrub back. But for right now, I thank everybody for hanging out with me. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world even. Please trade safe and stay safe, of course, as always. And with all of that being said, Landy out.
Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. CBR Street Gang, over, all by standing by, over.